Chief here reporting for CTT. When I last left off, we were at base camp inside the desert in Saudi Arabia. As I said, we convoyed up separately, and then finally the rest of the battalion arrived. And I got to experience my first sandstorm. And really about the only one I went through. I went through a windstorm later on, which I'll talk about. And but it was really weird. It was during the daytime, and you always see those Sahara movies, you know, where they got the sand blowing. Well, that's what it does, and it's like a wall of sand. It didn't really roll in like you see the sandstorm, I think, in the Mummy movie. It shows that wall coming at you. We didn't really get that. We just basically, the wind started blowing, sand started blowing with the wind, and then just picked up and picked up and picked up. But it was really weird to see, but the sun was still shining. You could still get the bright sunlight, even though it's reflected off of all that sand. And it was just really weird to watch, because I just looked out the back of the 577, our command vehicle. I slowly saw the rest of the battalion just disappear, even though they were like 100 yards, 200 yards maximum away from me, because we made a big circle perimeter. So it was really weird to watch all that stuff just disappear and disappear. And it didn't get to the point where I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. It wasn't really that bad, and it really wasn't that stinging either. Like, just a strong enough wind to make the sand just get thicker and thicker and thicker. So I really didn't experience well. I can't see my hand in front of my face, and I had the outline of, all the dust, because I did have goggles, and the old cheap goggles, and put a scarf over my nose and mouth, but I didn't get that filthy. I didn't really walk out inside of it. So that was fun. And as I said, I lived in a slit trench. So it was really, like I said, it was really weird to wake up mornings and see dew and frost, especially the frost on my sandbags in front of my fighting position. I don't remember when Bravo Company moved out, but they got to deploy first, because Bravo Company was the GSR company, which is ground surveillance radar. So they had to get up and get deployed, because we didn't know when, excuse me, we didn't know when anything was really officially going to kick off. We didn't have, we're going to attack at dawn at, on the 12th or whatever, or the 13th or 14th or whatever. We didn't know when we were attacking until it finally, came across the line. So we would have stand to in the morning. Now, stand to is, they say it dates back to the old cavalry days, where the cavalry soldiers would be bivouac at night, and they'd wake up just before dawn, because that's when the enemy or the Indians would attack. Well, we had a stand to also in case the enemy attacked. We were so far back, I don't think the enemy would ever reach us, not unless they did paratroopers or something like that. So it was kind of silly, and we couldn't have any fires. So as soon as the sun peaked up over the horizon, you can have your morning fires down. Now you're marking your positions. But before, just the generators and any other unaltered light discipline that you didn't have would reveal your situation. But being that we were a battalion, we had lots of generators run, so it wasn't really hard to figure out where we were due to the generators going. So we had lousy noise discipline the whole time we was over there, especially the 577, because it has, I think they call it the 4-4 Deuce also, as a generator, and it was up on top of the 577, and we had to run it 24/7 because we needed our radios to work and our lights to work. So bad noise discipline there too throughout the war. So Bravo Company got deployed, and I think just before we as a battalion moved forward to get into battle positions is when we had the incident where one of our Bravo Company 113s, which is a track vehicle similar to the 577. The 577 is tall enough to stand in, a 113 is not. So one of our 113s got shot up. Later, when I become a warrant officer and went down to Camp Ben or Fort Benning for some training, I got to see the tape of the incident where it's taken from inside the cab of the helicopter. You see their camera, or you see through their camera the situation that happened. What had happened, as far as I know, is that a Bradley from our division was stopped in need of help, not in need of help, was just there. Well, our GSRs are deployed forward, obvious reason, because they're radars. You don't want any other traffic ahead of you. So one of our 113s came up on this situation. All the crew members got out except the driver. And if you ever can find the videotape, I've been looking for it on the internet and I can't seem to find it, because they did show it on a talk show, because the colonel got canned because our divisional commander put out that no brigade commander will be on the front line during combat. So this brigade commander gets one of the first vehicle kill for our division and was in the helicopter, and you hear the warrant officer telling the colonel, because the colonel was flying and also guiding the missile that he launched, and the warrant officer is telling the colonel these are the wrong coordinates, because I guess there was a suspected enemy vehicle sighted somewhere else with similar coordinates, and but he went ahead and fired. Now the story we got, or the so-called rumor, because we never got any follow-up from this situation. All we know is that one of our 113s got lit up. The driver was inside of it. Supposedly the missile passed through his legs, passed by his legs, passed through the whole vehicle and went out the front end and then exploded. So we didn't lose anybody, but the 113 was a write-off. And but we never got any follow-up. All we got was the sad news that 113 was lit up, but there were no casualties. So we don't know if the driver was wounded, burnt, or what. And I don't remember coming back from the war and anybody saying, hey, yeah, Private so-and-so, Specialist so-and-so, man, he got his legs burnt, by that missile. Never got a clarification, but I did see, like I said, I did see the video of the incident, because Bradley, I guess, was not in need of help, but they were stationary, so the 113 thought they're stationary, maybe they have a problem. So our guys went out to be the good Samaritans that they were and to help them out. So that incident happened before we left base camp. And then when we left base camp, we moved out by companies. So half my company is track vehicles, and the other half, of course, is Humvees. And we did a convoy at night. Now, I don't know how to compare the path we took to anything that I've ever driven before, because we basically drove, I think they said we drove through a partial depression, but it was up and down, and then there were like these walls, so the track vehicles would not really bust through the walls of dirt, but they would drive over them, and then they would crush a little bit of it, and then of course the Humvees would, so we really tested our Humvees climbing capability. And like I said, we did this at night. I was the second wheeled vehicle in my Humvee behind the first sergeant. He was the lead Humvee of the wheeled vehicles, and he was directly behind the track vehicles, and the track vehicles were kicking up the sand. I mean, I'm barely seeing the tail lights of, because we only drove with our driving lights, so you got these two little dots, two red dots, and in the front you got the two little white dots that are pointing down, and that's about it for lights at night, because we drove with light discipline, even though we're kicking up a lot of dust, at least the tracks were. And it was more obscure than the Sandstorm, with the vehicles picking up all the dust, and all of a sudden the first sergeant stopped. I stopped. And it was just like instantaneous, all the dust just disappeared. And first sergeant got out, I got out and I go, "What's up, Top?" And he goes, "Well, look ahead." So I look around him and I'm like, "Where are the tracks?" He says, "Exactly, I lost them in the dust." So with all the dust settling, and like I said, generators make enough noise, so do track vehicles. So we went silent, and then we heard, and then we saw over about 200 yards to to our upper left where the track vehicles were setting, because First Sergeant had radioed one of the vehicles in that column and said, "Hey, we lost you." So we got back together and we drove the rest of the night through this up and down and going through like dry beds, stream dry beds, and it was just a terrible convoy. And then we got to our location where I guess we were going to kick off the war, because not much really happened at base camp. Like I said, we moved forward for a day, came back exactly the same day. Like I said, I dug my slit trench, went through a few rainstorms, not really severe rainstorms, but wet enough to make you miserable, but not wet enough to where it generated, mud to cling to your body and or your shoes or anything. But we still got partially wet. And of course, like I said, the first sergeant made us put all our wet weather gear and the Bravo duffel bag, and the Bravo duffel bag was sitting back at port in one of our Connaxes. And we'll meet up with that when we go into a rest after the war. So that's it about for this week. I guess I'll start next week with the kickoff to the war, where basically, what did I do? I drove, and I drove, and I drove. So this is Chief signing out for this week. Remember, freedom's not free. Hug a vet, thank a vet. So this is Chief out. See you next week.